Hello friends, this video on body fluids and circulation part 17 is brought to you by examfear.com. No more fear from exam. This knowledge, let us now try to understand the human circulatory system, which is nothing but a process of contraction and relaxation. Now the terms which are given for contraction and relaxation there are two specific scientific terms called systole and diastole. So systole is for the contraction and diastole is for relaxation. Right, so now here we will look at a stepwise process of how the heart beats or how the heart functions as a whole. Okay, so let us look at this process of systole and diastole stepwise. So the first step is joint diastole. As I said, diastole means relaxation. Joint means together. So joint diastole means both the auricles and the ventricles will relax. That is both right auricle, left auricle, right ventricle, left ventricle. All of them will be in a relaxed state. Now here in this picture, you can actually see which are the auricles and which are the ventricles. So this is right auricle, this is left auricle, this is right ventricle and this is left ventricle. Right? These are the four chambers of the heart. Okay. Now in the first step, all of them are in the relaxed state. Now what happens here? The auricles receive blood. Auricles keep on receiving blood. From where? So now if you talk about the right auricle, it is going to receive blood from the superior vena cava. So what is that? You remember we talked about the veins. Veins carry deoxygenated blood. So there are capillaries which join together to form venules, venules join together to form veins, and veins join together to form vena cava. So this vena cava actually carry the deoxygenated blood to the right auricle. So this comes from different body parts. So this is actually coming from different parts of the body. So this vena cava is carrying the deoxygenated blood to right auricle. And what about left auricle? The left auricle is receiving oxygenated blood. So the left auricle is receiving oxygenated blood from the pulmonary vein. So the pulmonary vein carries the oxygenated blood to the left auricle. Right? So this is what the auricles are doing. Right now all are in relaxed state, but the auricles are receiving the oxygenated and deoxygenated blood respectively. Okay, that is the first step. What happens next? Now the process starts, and it starts with the SA node. Now as I mentioned, where is the SA node? It is located in the right auricle somewhere. In this picture, this is not exact location, I'm just telling. Let us suppose this is where the SA node is located. So this is the SA node. So what does it do? It contracts, triggering auricles to contract. So the SA node basically generates an electrical impulse, and that electrical impulse travels from the SA node to the AV node. So the AV node will be located somewhere here. Let us suppose this is the AVN. Okay, so now when this generates an impulse and this impulse travels from SA node to AVN, and the delay in this conduction of the impulse causes the auricles to contract. So the auricles will contract. I am talking about both the auricles, the right auricle as well as the left auricle. Both of them will contract. Now what happens when the auricles contract? Now when the auricles contract, the bicuspid and tricuspid valve opens. What are these valves? These are the valves which are present between the right auricle and right ventricle, and left auricle and left ventricle. That means this valve and this valve. These two valves will open, so blood will start to flow from right auricle to right ventricle and also from left auricle to left ventricle. So now in this picture, I'll just show you with an animation, but I'll just show you about the deoxygenated part just to avoid confusion. So what happens? As soon as the auricles contract, this valve opens. that is this tricuspid valve opens and blood starts to flow from right auricle to right ventricle, right? Similarly, it happens on the other side also. This valve will open and blood will start to flow from left auricle to left ventricle. Right? Now, as the blood flows into the ventricles, at the same time, the SAN, which had generated the action potential or the electrical impulse, now that also starts to get conducted. So, from the AVN node, it reaches the AV bundles, and from AV bundles it actually reaches the bundle of His, something in this fashion. So the electrical impulse also gets conducted gradually, right? So now the second step, that is flow of blood from auricle to ventricle, that happens because of two reasons. One reason is that the impulse generated by the SA node contracts the auricles, because of which blood tend to flow. The second reason is that the valves open, this bicuspid and tricuspid valve opens, because of which it tends to flow. So the flow of blood into the ventricles increases almost by 30% due to the generation of this impulse, because this is an additional thing, right? Because of this impulse, the auricles are contracting all the more. So there is more flow of blood from auricles to ventricles. Okay. So now these signals reaches the ventricles through the Purkinje fibers. Now once the ventricle recognizes this impulses, so the ventricles also tend to contract. Now what happens when the ventricles contract? Now please remember that as soon as all the blood has entered into the ventricles, this valve closes, that is the bicuspid and the tricuspid valve will close. Now once these valves have closed, after that what happens? The ventricles receive the electrical impulses through the Purkinje fibers and they tend to contract. Now when the ventricles contract, now again I am talking about both the ventricles, both right and left ventricles will contract. Now when they contract, now at this time these valves are closed, that is bicuspid and tricuspid valves are closed, but the aortic valve and the pulmonary valve will open, right? So where is the pulmonary valve and where is the aortic valve? So we have, this is the aortic valve, this valve which you see here, that is between the left ventricle and the aorta. This is aorta. So this is the aortic valve. And where is the pulmonary valve? This is this one. This valve which we have is the pulmonary valve, and this valve is present between the right ventricle and the pulmonary artery. Okay. So what will happen? These two valves will open. So as a result, what happens? Now when this valve opens, blood will start to flow from the right ventricle into the pulmonary artery. So what is this blood actually? This is deoxygenated blood. So the deoxygenated blood will actually flow from right ventricle to the pulmonary artery. And where will the pulmonary take this blood? This pulmonary artery will take it to the lungs. So the lungs will receive the deoxygenated blood and then again oxygenation will happen. Now once oxygenation happens, then the oxygenated blood from lungs will be carried by this pulmonary vein into the left auricle. So that is how the process will happen. Now again, once this comes in, it will come to the left auricle, and again the same process is happening. I am showing just one by one, just not to create confusion, but whenever this valve opens, this is also opening, because on both the sides, both oxygenated blood side and deoxygenated blood side, the processes are happening simultaneously. So again, when this blood enters here and this valve opens, this valve also opens, because this is the time when the sinoatrial node actually generates the impulse. Now as a result, the blood flows from left auricle to left ventricle. So now this is oxygenated blood. Now once the blood has entered into the left ventricle, the bicuspid valve is going to get closed, and now again the ventricles will contract because the signals would have reached the ventricles, and as a result the pulmonary and aortic valve will open and these blood will move to their respective locations. From aorta again, where will it go? From aorta, the oxygenated blood will go to different parts of the body. Right? So now you understand how the heart actually functions, how it transfers oxygenated and deoxygenated blood to different parts of the body. Right? So you understood the role of both the things, the contraction and expansion of the auricles and ventricles, that is one thing. The signals or the electrical impulses generated by the nodal tissues, that is another factor. And the third factor is the opening and closing of the valves. And all of these take place in close coordination with each other. Please understand, once again, we have a quick recap so that you do not get confused. The first step is joint diastole, when both the auricles are relaxing. So both the auricles will receive blood. Then what will happen? This SA node will generate a signal, and that is when the auricles will contract. So both the auricles will contract simultaneously, and the bicuspid and the tricuspid valves will open. So the blood will flow from right auricle to right ventricle and also from left auricle to left ventricle. That is the second step. After this, what will happen is these valves will get closed, that is the bicuspid and tricuspid. But since the signal or the electrical impulses have now reached through the Purkinje fibers to the ventricles will contract. So both right ventricle and left ventricle will contract. As a result, the pulmonary valve and the aortic valve will open, and therefore the blood will flow from right ventricle to the pulmonary artery and from left ventricle to the aorta. Right? So this is the third step. So now what happens after this? Now once the ventricle has sent the blood, once the right ventricle has sent all the deoxygenated blood to the pulmonary artery and the left ventricle has sent all the oxygenated blood to the aorta, so the ventricles get relaxed. Right? Now once the ventricle gets relaxed, the ventricular pressure also falls, because now, till now there was a high pressure also, because if auricles are getting contracted, due to that high pressure the blood will flow fast into the ventricles. Similarly, when the ventricles contract due to the high pressure, the blood will try to flow out of the ventricles as soon as the valve opens. But now that the blood has already flown out of the ventricles will relax, the ventricular pressure will also fall, and as a result, this aortic valve and the pulmonary valve will also get closed. So that is going to be the last step. Actually, it is a kind of cyclic process. That is what I want to show you. The last step, what will happen? The pulmonary valve and the aortic valve will close. Right? That is one thing. The ventricular pressure will fall, because now the ventricles are relaxing. Now, as the ventricular pressure decreases further, what happens? These bicuspid and the tricuspid valves, they will be pushed up by the auricular pressure. And as a result, blood will freely move into the ventricles, not under high pressure. So now at this stage, we can say that both auricles and ventricles are relaxed. So basically, this is not the fourth step, but you have gone back to the first step of joint diastole, where both the auricles and the ventricles are relaxing. Right? So if you look at the entire process of systole and diastole, what happens is initially both are relaxing. After that, auricles contract, then ventricles contract. But when the ventricles are contracting, auricles relax. Now the ventricles again relax, and gradually the auricles also relax. So this process of contraction and relaxation causes heartbeat. This process of contraction and relaxation also causes the blood to flow appropriately throughout the body. Thank you. Please visit www.examfear.com to watch more videos, attempt free online test, get free study material, find tutors and mentors. Thank you once again.